If I suddenly had minutes to explain the simplest yet most impactful concept in real estate, I'd talk about the 1% rule. But before we dive into what it is and why it matters, let me start with this. Small, consistent actions lead to extraordinary results. That's true whether you're trying to improve your health, your career, or yes, your real estate portfolio. Now, let's simplify things. Real estate often feels overwhelming because it seems like this enormous mountain to climb. Where do you start? Which property is right? How do you know you're not making a mistake? But what if I told you there's a single rule, a simple guideline, that could cut through all that noise and give you clarity? That's what the 1% rule is all about. The 1% rule in real estate investing is the idea that a property's monthly rental income should be at least 1% of its total purchase price. It's simple math, but it's a game changer. Let's break it down. Say you're considering buying a property for $200,000. According to the 1% rule, that property should generate at least $2,000 in rent each month. If it does, it's worth considering. If it doesn't, you might want to think twice or negotiate for a lower price. Here's why this rule matters. Too many investors get caught up in the excitement of owning property without asking the right questions. They think, this home looks great, or it's in a nice neighborhood, but they don't stop to calculate whether it actually makes financial sense. The 1% rule forces you to focus on the numbers, not the emotions. And when it comes to real estate, the numbers are everything. But let's be honest, sometimes the 1% rule feels like it doesn't apply. Maybe you're looking in an expensive market where rents are lower compared to property prices. Or maybe you're in a rural area where rents are high, but demand isn't stable. Does that mean you should ignore the rule entirely? Not at all. Think of the 1% rule as a starting point, not a hard and fast rule. It's a filter, a way to quickly screen potential deals so you don't waste time on properties that won't work. But once you find a property that meets the 1% threshold, it's time to dig deeper. Now, here's the real magic behind the 1% rule. It simplifies your strategy, but it also aligns with something far bigger, momentum. You see, real estate isn't about hitting a home run with your first deal. It's about building small, consistent wins that compound over time. Let's say you start with one property. You find a $150,000 home that rents for $1,500 a month. It's not flashy, but it works. Over the next year, that property generates steady cash flow while appreciating in value. You save some of the cash flow, reinvest, and eventually, you're ready for the next deal. Now, imagine repeating this process 5 times, or 10. By focusing on properties that meet the 1% rule, you're building a portfolio that's not just profitable, but also resilient. It's the real estate equivalent of getting 1% better every day, and that's where the transformation happens. But here's where most people get stuck. They focus too much on the 100% goal instead of the 1% action. Let me explain. If you're new to real estate, the idea of owning multiple properties or generating 6 figures in rental income might feel impossible. You start comparing yourself to seasoned investors who've been doing this for decades, and suddenly, the whole thing feels out of reach. But the 1% rule reminds you to start small. It's not about finding the perfect property or building the perfect portfolio overnight. It's about taking the first step, and then the next, and the next. So what if you started today? What if you spent just an hour looking at properties in your area that meet the 1% rule? What if you ran the numbers on a few deals instead of scrolling through social media or watching TV? That small action could be the start of something huge. Now, let's talk about the objections. The reasons people convince themselves this won't work. Maybe you're thinking, but in my market, it's impossible to find properties that meet the 1% rule. Fair enough. In high-cost areas like New York or San Francisco, the numbers can be tough, but that doesn't mean you can't adapt. In expensive markets, the 1% rule might shift to the 0.8% rule, or even the 0.7% rule. It's not ideal, but it's still a benchmark. And remember, you're not limited to your local market. There are countless opportunities in smaller cities and towns across the country where the 1% rule is alive and well. Others might say, I don't have the money to start investing. That's valid too, but it's not a dead end. Start by educating yourself, building your network, and saving aggressively. The truth is, no one starts with everything they need. But if you focus on getting just 1% closer to your goal every day, the momentum will build. Here's one last thing to think about. The 1% rule isn't just about real estate. It's a mindset. When you start looking for small, consistent improvements in every area of your life, everything begins to change. You stop waiting for the perfect moment and start taking action. You stop seeing challenges as obstacles and start seeing them as opportunities to grow. So what if you applied the 1% rule to your health, or your relationships, or your career? What if, instead of trying to fix everything at once, you focused on getting just a little better every day? The truth is, you can't control the market or the economy. You can't predict interest rates or housing prices, but you can control your actions. You can decide to learn, to grow, and to keep moving forward, 1% at a time. So let me ask you this. What if today was the day you started? What if you took the first step toward building the real estate portfolio you've been dreaming about? And what if, a year from now, you looked back and realized that small, consistent actions had transformed your entire life? Because here's the thing, a lot can happen in a year. It's not too late to make a change. It's not too late to show up for yourself. And it's definitely not too late to start applying the 1% rule. Start where you are, take the first step, and never look back. That's the power of the 1% rule. Will you use it?